Ladies and gentlemen, good day to you. Welcome to the Eastern Cape Virtual Business Exhibition. There are over 260 organizations taking part in the Virtual Business Exhibition, the first of its kind in South Africa. So welcome to all of you, and welcome especially now to the virtual seminar. We have a few speakers lined up who will give out their insights into the way forward for business, the impact that the virus pandemic has had on business. So thank you for joining us, and we hope that you will find this valuable and informative as well. Our first guest speaker at the Eastern Cape Virtual Seminar is Mr. Prince Matonzi, and Prince is the Operations Manager at the Nelson Mandela Bay Business Chamber. And Prince, we welcome you to the virtual exhibition seminar this morning, and look forward to what the Chamber has to say, endorsing this project, and also the way forward when it comes to business not being as usual, but business into the future. So welcome to Prince Matonzi.
A very good morning to everyone present today. My name is Prince Matonzi, Operations Manager at the Nelson Mandela Bay Business Chamber. Before I start with my message of support, I would like to thank Andrew and his team for allowing us an opportunity to partner with Inkanyezi in this very important event. I'm very pleased to be speaking at this Eastern Cape virtual exhibition this morning. In the weeks since the start of the national lockdown, the Nelson Mandela Bay Business Chamber has been working tirelessly to coordinate and offer needed support to businesses and local government amid the COVID-19 crisis. The COVID-19 pandemic has had a traumatic collective impact on our lives. More tellingly, the pandemic has reminded us of the deep-seated economic and social inequalities facing our business communities. However, today I stand here very excited about the new frontiers and opportunities that the COVID-19 pandemic has presented to innovative entrepreneurs. One such innovation is this Eastern Cape virtual exhibition, masterminded by one of the Business Chamber members, Inkanyezi Events, in partnership with various other stakeholders. As the Business Chamber, we are acutely aware that our existence is deeply woven into the fabric of our member companies and the metro at large. It is this awareness that propelled us to support this innovation by Inkanyezi Events. We also understand the value of linkages that will arise out of the various engagements that will be taking place in the next 2 days. While the exact extent of the COVID-19 pandemic's impact on the economy is not quantified to date, we know for certain that it will be profound on many aspects of life. The Business Chamber recognizes that it is important to harness and embrace all the necessary technological developments and platforms in order to mitigate some of the unintended consequences arising from the strategies implemented to deal with the pandemic. The year 2020 will be a challenging one, both for businesses and in particularly for the SMEs and the general community. In keeping with global changes thrust upon us, it is therefore important for SMEs to embrace the platforms that will continue being presented via technology. Collaboration and partnerships with local, national, and global stakeholders will be important to successfully navigate around the challenges facing businesses, such as access to market, access to technology, and so forth. The Business Chamber applauds Inkanyezi Events and the various supporting organizations for availing this business model for events to our SMEs in the Eastern Cape. We believe that the physical barriers that separate the different districts in the province will indeed be brought down in the next 2 days as businesses interact virtually in a more cost-effective business model. In concluding, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to implore all the SMEs to do some of the following in the next couple of days. Keep looking for niche markets in the space. Search for opportunities to invest and reinvest into your product and services. Learn from others and don't hesitate to reach out for more information. Join credible business associations because there is a wealth of knowledge and support to be gained from there. And lastly, build credibility and integrity in your dealings. With these few words, ladies and gentlemen, I wish every participant the best that success can offer. I thank you.
I'd like to introduce Matthew Kemp. Matthew is a director and attorney at Pagden's Attorneys, and we look forward, Matthew, to your input here at the Eastern Cape Virtual Exhibition Seminar.
Hello everyone, and thank you very much, Andrew, for that wonderful introduction. I'm going to put this to one side because this is a virtual seminar, so I don't need to worry too much about spreading anything across to all of you. So as I toss my mask to the side, I just want to say how grateful I am and how excited I am to be here with everyone at Nkanyezi's first Eastern Cape virtual exhibition. It is something that is, I think, a great initiative. And once again, Andrew, thank you so much for the introduction. As he said, my name's Matthew Kemp. I'm an attorney and director at Pagden's Attorneys here in Port Elizabeth, and I specialize in litigation and labour law. Today I want to just share with all of you a couple of points to be aware of from a legal perspective, particularly in your contracts, be them business supply agreements that you have or your employment contracts that are in place with your employees. Some of the things to look out for, and especially in this time during COVID-19, we have entered into level 3 lockdown, but these are very important concepts to be aware of nonetheless. So first, since the first lockdown was announced at level 5, a lot of people were talking about something called force majeure or supervening impossibility of performance. It's quite a mouthful, and it's got a lot of legal definitions behind it. But essentially, what these concepts mean is when you have a contract with another business or another person, and something happens which is completely out of both of your control and prevents one of you from performing your obligations in terms of that contract, that is something that we call a supervening impossibility, or its Latin term force majeure. And what you will also find in many of your contracts, somewhere towards the end of the contract, usually there'll be a heading and it'll say force majeure, and it'll talk about things like acts of God or acts of man that have resulted in a war, things that really are outside of your control that prevent performance. And then it'll detail in your contract what happens in that situation. Now, obviously, we're talking about different contracts. There's so many different ways that this clause can be phrased. But what I want you to look out for in those clauses is what are the defined supervening impossibilities. So often you'll see things like floods or fires, or as I mentioned just now, war. And you need to really get a grasp of what your contract says about what constitutes a supervening impossibility in your contract. But some general ideas. I always use the example of someone who's ordered a consignment of plastic ducks. Okay, if we have an agreement with someone where we're ordering 10 containers worth of plastic ducks, and somewhere on the journey from North America to South Africa, those plastic ducks fall in the ocean because the ship sank. In reality, there is a possibility that you could spend millions of rands and send a crane or something down there to pick those plastic ducks out of the water, and you'll be able to rescue your plastic ducks. Now, really, in all fairness, that's all but impossible. So what we're talking about is not just a impossibility in the strict sense of the term, but we're talking about a reasonable impossibility. Now, why do I share that with you? Well, it's because during lockdown and during COVID-19, we've got to really look at, if we are unable to perform, is it genuinely, are we unable to perform for a real reasonable reason? Or are we unable to perform because we say we can't? Or does the party that we're trying to enforce performance on just say they can't perform? You need to really interrogate the facts and the circumstances. Another example that I'll share with you is actually from our law reports. I'm a very big rugby fan, and just after the 1995 Rugby World Cup, a group of guys got together and they decided that they were going to travel to watch South Africa play England at Twickenham. They bought a package deal, and when they got to Twickenham, or when they got to England, they found out at the gates at Twickenham that they were not given any tickets. The company that organized that tour failed to organize the tickets before they left South Africa. And when they tried to get the tickets, they were all sold out. They raised supervening impossibility of performance as a defense. The court said, unfortunately, you were already in breach when the impossibility happened. You were supposed to get these guys the tickets for the rugby match when they were still available. But because you failed to do that, you can't now, when you're in breach, say that there's an impossibility of performance. So, if you were already in breach of a contractual term before lockdown, or if your contractual partner was in breach before lockdown, you cannot rely on lockdown or COVID-19 as an excuse to continue in that breach. Performance can still be enforced. So just to remember, when it comes to force majeure, when it comes to supervening impossibility, look at the facts objectively, consider whether you are factually unable to perform, whether you were already in default before lockdown, and make sure that you've read your contract thoroughly and obtained legal advice before you litigate on any of these principles, because heaven forbid you proceed on the incorrect understanding of your contract. Moving along, there's another very important key to unlocking your sort of employer-employee relationships, and that's something called the Protection of Personal Information Act. As we move back to the workplace, there are regulations out there that say every employer must have a policy in place that caters for keeping the workplace safe, whether it's your staff or if it's clients that are coming into the building. Now that will mean you need to ask questions of people that come into your building, and we've all been there. You walk into somewhere and they ask you whether you've been in contact with someone that's been infected, whether you've traveled in the last 3 months to a place that is considered a hotspot. These sorts of questions go down on a piece of paper and a record that the company then keeps. Is that information personal information in terms of the POPI Act? Well, the answer is yes, it is. What can a company do with that information? Well, it's very important that the company has a policy in place to protect that information and make sure that it's not disclosed unlawfully. Now, what if your employee tests positive for COVID-19 and you need to keep your workplace safe and make sure that everyone goes in quarantine? What do you do then? Well, you need to make sure that whatever information that you have regarding an employee, whether they've tested positive or not for the virus, that information is kept secret and that the employee is not discriminated against as a result of that information. For example, you can't have an employee disclose to you that they have been in contact with someone with COVID-19 and send them packing with their bags packed for 14 days and not pay them a cent for those 14 days. You need to make sure that you have a consultation with that employee and come to the bottom of what's happened to them and how they're going to be affected by this going forward. Now already we're touching on a certain aspect of employee relations, and something else that's really come out at the moment is the question of retrenchments and dismissals for operational requirements. A lot of companies are feeling the pinch. Fortunately, government has implemented something called the Temporary Employment Relief Scheme, or TERS as a lot of us know it, and that's providing some relief for employers when they need to pay their employees' salaries. But unfortunately, a lot of restructures are going to have to take place and are already taking place. Please remember, if you are embarking on a retrenchment process, to ensure that you comply with Section 189 and 189A of the Labour Relations Act. A lot of companies have asked me the question whether the rules have been relaxed when it comes to employment relationships due to COVID-19? The answer is no. The law hasn't necessarily changed. The only thing that's changed is the circumstance within which we apply those laws. Okay? The CCMA, yes, had to close its doors during the level 5 lockdown and the level 4 lockdown, and it slowly started to open its doors again. But that doesn't mean that employees aren't able to enforce unfair conduct against its employer. When it comes to 189, the most important thing to keep in mind is fair consultation process. Okay? When you submit your first notice, make sure that you cover all of the bases that are set out in Section 189. Make sure as well that you really fairly consider any alternatives to retrenchment that your staff might give you. So if you really have an open mind, you might be able to avoid retrenchments if you consider what your employees have to say, and certainly in some matters that I've been involved in, your staff have a better understanding of what's going on the ground and can really add some valuable input when you're discussing retrenchment or demotions as an alternative to retrenchment. And finally, when you discuss your employee TERS payments or reductions in salary or reductions in work time, please make sure that you engage with all of your staff, be it in writing, be it in person. It's really important that you engage meaningfully with your staff before you unilaterally implement a change in working time or a change in salary. Ladies and gentlemen, that is all I'm going to be sharing with you today. There is a lot more out there when it comes to your legal compliance requirements, but I've found that those are the three main issues that are coming out at the moment. Please make sure that you read your contracts carefully. Please make sure that you obtain very decent legal advice before you make any decisions going forward. And remember, when it comes to the courts, they are open. The courts are making plans to go digital when it comes to hearing matters, and make sure that you are staying safe and keeping your workforce as safe as possible. Please look after yourselves and enjoy the exhibitions. My name is Matthew Kemp and I'm from Pagden's Attorneys. Thank you very much.
So a very big thank you, Matthew. Thank you very much for your time to address us. Very interesting about contracts and how those are either valid or not valid. I really appreciate your time, Matthew. Thank you for being with us here at the Eastern Cape Virtual Exhibition Seminar. So that was Matthew Kemp from Pagden's Attorneys. Thank you, Matthew. We now welcome to the conference program Mr. Gary Markson. Gary is the Provincial Executive Head for Standard Bank in the Eastern Cape. And Gary, very pleased to have you with us. Thank you for joining us. And Gary will be addressing us on the 5 things every business should know about recovery after the COVID-19 pandemic. So Gary, thank you very much for being here, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you very much, Andrew, for having me here, and thank you very much to the viewers that are involved in the webinar today. Good day to all of you. Andrew, the question that you asked me is I should just maybe think about 5 things that every business should implement towards recovery in the midst of COVID-19 pandemic. And in thinking about this, I thought of a few things. And really the first one, Andrew, is around the repurposing of the business model. I think for many businesses that have clients, maintaining contact with those clients is probably the thing that's of most paramount importance to them. And I guess if you're used to having physical interactions, it becomes a little bit difficult to maintain contact. So repurposing your businesses and configuring your technology in such a way that you can continue to have sessions such as the one we are having right now, or even having your client interactions through mediums such as Skype and Zoom are very important to enable you, Andrew, to continue to maintain contact with your customer base. The other thing that I thought of was, given that there's so little contact that we can have with one another, we now find ourselves having these huge office blocks that we might have, huge office premises that we might no longer need to have, given that we have found ways in which to work around them. Our staff and employees are working from home, and as a result, we continue to pay huge rentals for office premises. one of my suggestions would be to try and dispose of a little bit of square meterage that you have where possible, because you want to reduce your non-core assets that aren't doing any work for you. It's almost like dead money that you have to fork money out for on a monthly basis. So Andrew, that would certainly be one of the things that I would suggest, is to reduce some office space where possible. On the other end, Andrew, you asked me a question earlier around a little bit of marketing and what it is that I would think of doing. And I guess a lot of people have used a lot of online marketing tools in order to get their business out there, and that would be the thing that I would say we need to continue to do. If you haven't and you relied on the pamphlets and so forth, it's going to become a little bit more tricky for you, so you might want to start thinking of establishing an e-commerce site at some point. And I guess through this webinar you'd find a lot of people that would have those services available that you could make use of. Andrew, we also spoke about innovation, and that, now is the time to find new revenue streams and diversify. And a little bit later on in this video, you'll find that I've added a clip that speaks about the Standard Bank Simply Blue offering. And this is really just an online store that we have provided for our clients to use. You can pretty much go and put your business on there, and it allows for seamless means of payment and delivery of the services to the end user. But there will be a little bit more info that's going to follow with detail around that. Andrew, we spoke earlier on prior to this interview around relationships and the importance of communication and keeping our relationships open. I think there's no better time or no more opportune time for you to get really close to your creditors. I think, we know that cash flow is probably the thing that is the most difficult obstacle that customers need, or that businesses rather need to overcome in this period. So it's important that you maintain the relationship with your creditors, seek to find payment breaks, or even an extension of your payment terms, Andrew, in order to, find yourself just relieving yourself of some of the cash flow pressures. Find means in which you can discount the services that your creditors have rendered to you. On the other end, Andrew, we spoke also about some of the things that we are able to provide as financial services. And I think we've seen the banking sector come to the party in a really big way. I would encourage every business to take advantage of the payment holiday breaks that are being offered, and make use of that cash flow to either square away some debt and relieve yourself of any hardcore gearing that you might have within your business. And of course, we have some of the loan options that we have. The COVID-19 loan fund that is backed by National Treasury from a guarantee perspective is a fantastic means in which to secure some really cheap source of funding that offers you a little bit of a payment moratorium for the first 6 months, and just enables you to trade out of the situation that you might find yourself in. So Andrew, I think those would be the things that are really top of mind for me. The last thing that I'd like to leave with the viewers is to ask them to please find their way to the Standard Bank exhibition stand, where there'll be a lot more promotions and services offered by our brand in supporting businesses through this pandemic. Trust that you'll all enjoy the conference, and I wish you well.
So this is the beloved Foxy that I mentioned in my previous posts, and this car is near and dear to our hearts. It's been our family for a really long time, and we actually have a bit of a hairy story about it. So being an old car, it needed a new engine, and we bought this engine from this guy, and it was just completely not what he had promised, and he basically ripped us off and ran away with the cash that we had paid for the engine. Unfortunately, I think it's happened to many of us when you're buying and selling things online, or if you're just dealing privately with transactions like that, especially when it's large sums of money, it's super, super stressful. And that's why Standard Bank's escrow service is so cool, because it's safe, it protects both the buyer and the seller. And the way that it works is Standard Bank acts as a third party. Once the buyer and the seller have agreed upon particular terms and the goods have been received by the buyer and everything's okay, and that money, which sits in a trust fund, like a separate little account, then gets paid to the seller and everybody's happy. And it's just a much safer way to transact. And I learned recently that you can actually also use it if you're a freelancer like myself. So you can make payments throughout the project, or the person who's using your services can make payments throughout the project, which I think is pretty cool. If you're a Standard Bank customer like myself, you can be both a buyer and a seller. But if you're not, you can just open a very simple account with them, quick and easy. And it's a really fantastic way to safeguard your transactions. And I think in the current climate that we all find ourselves in, where it's a little bit unpredictable, it's a fantastic way to do so. So protect the things that you love, like this over here, and look after your money and look after yourself, and make sure that you transact wisely. You can also click the link in my bio to find out more about Standard Bank's escrow service. There's a lot of information there, and they're ready to answer any questions that you may have. So have a look.
Our next guest speaker is Kevin Wakeford, and Kevin needs no introduction to the Eastern Cape. Having been born and bred here, he attended and matriculated at Muir College Boys High School in Uitenhage, and was also a previous CEO of the Business Chamber. And Kevin will be addressing us today on the state of the economy post-COVID-19. So Kevin, thank you very much for being with us today as part of the Eastern Cape Virtual Exhibition, and we look forward to hearing from you what you have to share with us today. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Kevin Wakeford. I think many of you in the Eastern Cape would know me. I spent many years at the local Chamber of Commerce as well as the Eastern Cape Development Corporation before moving up to the South African Chamber of Business in 1999. However, I've maintained my contact with the province, and I really appreciate the opportunity of speaking to this the Eastern Cape Virtual Exhibition Conference. I thank all those who have committed during a trying time to make this virtual exhibition possible, and I also would like to congratulate Inkanyezi and Andrew Binning for putting this very, very interesting concept together basically during a time of economic trial and distress for many, many people. It's good to talk business, and it's very good to know what's out there and what's happening during these times. Now, the topic I've been asked to speak about is in fact around the economy of the post-COVID-19 event. In other words, when COVID-19 ends, what will the economy look like? And what is our response to that as businesses of the Eastern Cape and elsewhere, but more importantly of the Eastern Cape? So I want to start off by saying we don't know when COVID-19 will end. We do know that we, as of today, are entering a new level 3 for the country, which allows a large portion of the economy to get going again. But what are the current restrictions, or what are the current challenges that we are faced with? Well, firstly, let me say this. You'll hear many economists on television, and they will give you a very high-level macro view of things. I don't want to talk about that. I want to focus more on ordinary family businesses, small businesses, the bulk of the business community out there. And if you really listen to economists, one must say that we need to demythologize economics, because it's pitched at such a high level that, you know, our minds are interrupted and we refer to other things rather than listening to them. But what is important to know is that economics is not a science. Economics is essentially the study of human behavior in the production and the migration of goods and services to different parts of the economy. It's not rocket science. It's about how human beings decide to produce and how to exchange goods and services. So let's look at what's happened. We've had a total shutdown, particularly for the first 30 days, of the supply side of the economy as well as the demand side of the economy. So the economy has literally been frozen. Sure, there have been a few essential services which have been permitted to persist, but generally speaking, there's been a lockdown and the economy has frozen. There hasn't been much movement, very little manufacturing, very little production, and the services sector, even e-commerce, were restricted during level 4. So what does that mean for us? Well, what it means is that the supply chain has been breached. In fact, the entire value chain of the economy has been breached. There's been almost a suspension of normal economic activity. Today, many businesses during level 3 will start up again. And one wonders what will go through their minds. What will they experience? Will they still have the same suppliers? Will those suppliers have stock? What will they do with an entire workforce if they don't have a reasonable order book? Will they consider putting people on short time? Will they consider retrenchment? Will they consider going it and believing that things can improve? It depends on, once again, good old economics. In other words, human behavior. Will human beings become retentive? In other words, will they become indecisive? Will they hold back on major decisions? Or will they, in fact, rise to the opportunity that presents itself? So generally speaking, the economy faces, in my view, and based on anecdotal evidence that I've picked up through different organizations, about 10% or 8 to 10% of small businesses have already closed their doors. And then there are about 30 to 40% of small businesses that are severely distressed. In other words, there's no income, or there hasn't been any income, but their costs persist. So in some cases, they still have to redeem their loans. In some cases, they have to continue paying their rentals for business accommodation. In some cases, like hotels and smaller B&Bs and Airbnb and all kinds of little outlets in the tourism sector are still closed. They aren't allowed to operate unless they have a special permit for people with a medical condition. So the opportunities in this environment, as we see it, are in fact, if you look at online trading, e-commerce, online learning, logistics that support online trading businesses. Then, of course, there's the mopping up of assets. Those who have cash reserves will, in fact, you will see they will probably be bolder, and they will go out there and they'll start mopping up either assets that have resulted in insolvencies, in liquidations, in business rescue. There'll be a lot of speculation in the market where people who have less of an aversion to risk, they will start mopping up assets in the economy and revitalizing those assets as part of the means of production. But there will be those who lose everything. So how do we respond to this difficult dilemma? And there are many who have argued that the lockdown has caused such an economic hernia that the consequences in terms of malnutrition and opportunistic diseases and retrenchments and all of those negative things that go with that could in fact be far more severe in terms of human health consequences than COVID-19 itself. But we're not here to discuss the merits and demerits of the lockdown. What's more important is how we respond to that. Many families and ordinary citizens, because they are consumers as business, have run out of capital. Most individual citizens who are on a salary could probably sit it out for 2 months max. Now we've gone through those 2 months. And the chances of rocking up at work and facing the possibility of short time or retrenchment are very real. So the big issues here are we have to pull together. We're going to have to reduce costs in business. We're going to have to find improved ways of collaborating. We need more economies of scale. So smaller businesses in similar sectors are probably going to have to band together rather than standing separately, because it's very difficult to survive as a small business in this type of environment. So my advice would be, other than seeking out the new economy, the fourth industrial revolution, which speaks to the Internet of Things, online trading, e-commerce, etc., which I've mentioned, if we're not going that route, because that route will do well, but not everyone can go into that. You still, even with e-commerce, you still have the need to pick apples off trees and to box the apples and to transport them to a market. Those parts of the economy will need to be sustained and will need to keep going. But how do we do it without capital? Well, government have a whole raft of relief measures, business loans that have been put in place. Certain banks have, in fact, suspended the interest payments on loans. We wonder what will happen to the liquidation sector. Will there be a suspension of liquidations? Will there be a suspension of insolvencies? One doesn't know. In the US economy, many of these interventions have been reasonably successful. We haven't gone that far yet as South Africa. And possibly government will broaden a number of the relief measures. But let's say they don't. And I'm going to end here. We need to band together. We need to be more resourceful. We need to be more industrious and far more creative in terms of how we run our businesses. There's no special truth on this. It's all about, just like this conference or this exhibition, it's about innovation. It's about doing things differently. And that's my message to you today. Thank you very much.
Our next guest speaker at the Eastern Cape Virtual Seminar is from Absa Bank, and a very interesting topic on e-tailing. So welcome to Absa Bank, and look forward to hearing what you have to share with us at the Eastern Cape Virtual Seminar.
Good day. My name is Lesego Mpakanyane. Today, I'll be taking you through 3 practical considerations towards starting your e-tailing business. First and foremost is your customer. Secondly, how do you make money? And lastly, scale. In other words, how do you grow your business? But before I get ahead of myself, it would be remiss of me not to mention that e-commerce industry in South Africa remains in its infant stage, currently accounting for less than 1.5% of trade and expected to reach 2% by 2022. Despite its seemingly negligible contribution towards retail sales, e-tailing is projected to grow at 20% between 2019 and 2024, reaching 49.5 billion rand, largely disrupting the nature of business and customer behavior as we know it. It is already evident now during the COVID-19 pandemic that no business, especially retailers, should not be considering any electronic or internet-based reselling of their products. Judging by recent developments within the sector, numerous retailers have established strategic partnerships with e-hailing service providers to reach some of their other customers. Customer. There are numerous tools and methods available to define your ideal customer traits. These could be simple, for instance, age, gender, or area, or it could be more complex based on their lifestyle, life stage, or pay cycle. In so doing, it enables you to design distinct personas using customer characteristic traits and distinct need states to start mapping and testing your assumptions, ensuring that as you define and refine your customer attributes, also ensures you remain mindful about the number of distinct customers in that need state. Too narrowly defined, it becomes unfeasible to pursue. Too broad, it becomes too fragmented and capital intensive. Accurately defined, well, you know the story of Goldilocks and the Three Bears. Upon completion of your ideal customer, the subsequent steps ought to answer the following questions. How will they know about your channel and its service offerings? How will you gain their trust? And how can you guarantee safety concerning payments? How easy is it to sign up? What value will the customer derive from your offering? How easy is it to acquire and, if necessary, return products? All relating to the daunting last mile. How frequent will it be used? And what will it cost? What is their attitude towards this offering? Better put, what state of mind are they in when they need to consider your service above any other? Bear it in mind, you could conduct this process iteratively, improving and enhancing as you validate your assumptions. Which brings me to my second point. How do you make money? Make spending money as easy as possible. This may come more naturally to some, more than others, in spite of the circumstances, and some may argue that easy is subjective. However, I'm suggesting here is giving some thought as to how the user can effortlessly fulfill their needs with you. Retailers refer to this as first visit advantage, loosely described as the URL you've bookmarked, your most frequently visited website, and dare I say it, it could even be your homepage for your targeted customer. Although it may be said that e-tailers may not be required to adhere to all the brick and mortar store requirements, they are still required to adhere to attributes such as convenience, variety, product information, quality, and price insofar as the website is concerned. In fact, I would venture to say e-tailers are required to surpass brick and mortar requirements as a result of the vast amount of data they have available to them, especially when it comes to merchandising, layout, and checkouts. Gone are the FAB days, an acronym for features, advantages, and benefits. Consumers are more interested and attuned to social and environmental causes, multiple outfit options for multiple occasions, be it leisure, casual, or formal, pairing of meals with adjacent products such as wines and desserts. E-tailers that can adequately do this are more likely to be presented with opportunity to sell their products. More so, they are more likely to increase the average transaction value or basket size. Coupling the above attributes with an effortless checkout point reduces the risk of customers abandoning their basket. The last attribute you will need to consider as a potential e-tailer is how you will scale your business. I would suggest thinking of complementary businesses or products that will fit well within your existing customer need state. This could be different products, categories, i.e. groceries, electronics, apparel, and furniture, or service-orientated businesses such as financial services, airline and concert tickets, etc. Or you could bundle all the recurring and frequently purchased baskets on a subscription basis, making it easier for your customer to spend money with you. For your most valued customer, you could demonstrate how well you know them by physically sending them recommendations of products they would most likely be interested in at no cost. Should they wish to have the recommended products returned to you within a satisfactory condition at a predetermined time again, making it easier for customers to spend money again with you. Ultimately, being considered as the first visit advantage means you will have ample data that will provide rich insights and assist you anticipate your customer's next purchase. In conclusion, just to recap, we discussed the customer, we followed the money, and we spoke about scale. And if you'd like some more insights or would like to discuss any wholesale, retail, and franchise-related topics, or you are interested in our e-merchant solutions will make it easier for customers to spend money with you, contact us via email at franchising@absa.co.za. Thank you.
So our next guest speaker is Dr. Charles Du Toit. Charles is a strategic leadership and HR specialist, and we're really grateful to have Charles as part of this Eastern Cape virtual exhibition seminar. So Charles, over to you.
Thank you for the introduction. It's really exciting to be part of the Eastern Cape Virtual Exhibition. A huge thanks to Nkanyisi as well as friends and sponsors, Nomkita from the Business Chamber, Les from the Border Car Chamber, some business people from ABSA, some Standard Bank, Eastern Cape Development Corporation, and Cape Trip Parks and Tourism. Do you remember the Poseidon Adventure? It was a movie that was remade in around 2007, but the original one was made way back in 1972. The movie is about a cruise liner that gets hit by a tsunami, and the tsunami capsizes the cruise liner completely, and survivors spend stressful time trying to get out. And the original movie in modern day terms looks rather, the special effects don't work, but there's a haunting theme song that made this movie memorable, and that's called The Morning After. There's got to be a morning after. There's got to be a morning after. If we can hold on through the night, we have a chance to see the sunshine. Let's keep looking for the light. I want to talk to you about leading when we crest the tsunami wave of COVID-19. There is something about a morning after, however. Morning afters are seldom what we thought they may be. They are not a return to the day befores. The morning after burying a loved one, the morning after coping with a tragedy, the morning after dealing with a storm, with a massive disaster, that morning after normally means that there is a massive default in the lives of the people going through that crisis at the moment. And I think that this crisis is no different. The morning after will look different to the day before. We have sacrificed so much to get through the storm. But when we return, things will be different. Our client base will be different. Our customers will be under pressure. Cash flow is going to be a crisis. Economic challenges abound. The morning after, while it's what we hope for in the middle of the storm, is not just going to be a return to normal. Things have shifted dramatically. In the morning after, an opportunity also exists. There is an opportunity for new starts, for new beginnings, for a reinvention of ourselves. The world around us is reinventing itself. We're seeing amazing sights. There are freeways empty of people, but there are villages in India who are seeing the Himalayas for the first time in generations because the smog is cleared. In Venice, there are fish in the canals in Venice that you can see swimming. That has not been seen for many, many years. Nature is refreshing itself, and this lockdown has done a lot in the environmental side of our world. But while humans have been locked down, they're also refreshing and rethinking around their worlds. And it's clear that when we get back to work as normal, to life as normal, there will be a shift because people will have shifted themselves in how they feel about the world and what is important to them. I think that the social distance crucial element of COVID-19 has helped us to really understand how important our relationships are with one another, and how that primarily as humans, that ability to connect and deal with each other is at the heart of who we are. During the lockdown, people have had a relook at their worlds. It is true that people are really keen for that social connection, the ability to pop in and talk to somebody, to engage each other at a work level. But I don't think anybody's missed the heavy-handed boss, the office politics, the pressure cooker meetings, and those dynamics of corporate life which place huge stress on the people around us and participating. And I think there's a real opportunity here for business to reset itself. Almost like time to break the habits. We've got used to leading in a certain way, but the new world will require of us special leaders. It is true that right now we need leaders who give us a vision of the future, that help us to see where we need to go. But is it not also true that if the leader is unable to take the people with them, is unable to inspire the people that they lead, that those visions, those great ideals will just be good ideas. It's only when the leader is able to influence and build enthusiasm around a vision that those visions have any chance of becoming reality. There are two ways in which we can exercise influence. Firstly, we could utilize our positional power. People comply with us because we're the leader. We have the title manager, supervisor, CEO, general, whatever it is, leader. And because we have that title, if we tell people to do things, they will do it, because if they don't, there would be consequence. So people operate from a position of fear. And that type of leader has a limited impact on their people, because what they're getting is compliance. It's the same as the instructions that we deal with from a day-to-day basis in COVID. You know, you will wear a face mask. You will stand 1.5 meters apart. If people are doing this because they feel like they have to, you're going to find that when there is no one watching, they will probably breach these rules. The other type of leader is the leader that is truly connected to their people. The leader that has taken time to build that primary relationship. The leader who really cares, that authentic care about their people, is experienced by the people they lead. When people experience a leader that is authentic, truly cares about them, and takes time to build a relationship and connection, then leaders gain the wonderful gift of trust. People start to trust leaders who they believe have their best interests at heart. And if a leader is trusted, that leader gains the magic ingredients of leadership called influence. All great theories of leadership have a definition that says something like, a leader is someone who is able to influence a person or group of people towards a common goal. That ability to influence people will determine whether the visions that we've created and the great ideas that we have will actually turn into reality. So right now, when the world has called us to be social distant, we need to take special care to build the relationships. If you're in a position of leadership, the quality of the relationship you have with your people, the amount of trust that they have in you as a consequence of that, will determine whether you can influence them or whether they will just comply because you gave them an instruction. In this modern world, we need leaders who are able to achieve something special. You don't want followers who are purely following rules and complying because they feel they have to. You want your subordinates to be enthusiastic, to be involved, to be engaged, to be thinking about what they're doing. And this is truly great leadership. So taking time to connect, these sessions, these meetings, these engagements, these catch-ups, caring about people, following up where they are, checking in on their lives, making sure that your people are connected to your organization is crucial at this moment. And it will be as we move forward. Social distance has taught us that our relationships are important. Leaders who don't have a relationship actually don't have the ability to lead. They have to rely on command. Emerging from this crisis would be two leaders. The leader who has spent this time building relationships, even though it's difficult because of social distance. And the leader who's neglected that, focused on the delivery, and remains just a manager. The future will rely on great leadership. Leaders that are really able to inspire subordinates to follow a great vision. When people are just complying, then your management power is all you have. But when people really believe and trust in you because the relationship is sound and authentic, then the ability to influence people, to make great decisions, to come up with great solutions becomes possible. And this is what we need in the new world post-COVID.
So a very big thank you to Dr. Charles du Toit for his insightfulness there in terms of HR and leadership abilities. Thank you, Charles, for being part of us here at the Eastern Cape Virtual Exhibition. Much appreciated. So that brings us to the end of the seminar component of the Eastern Cape Virtual Exhibition. Thank you to everyone for being with us this morning. Thank you to all our guest speakers. We really appreciate your time. It's been very insightful. Much information has been gained. And I'd like to thank you for being here today to be part of the seminar. I invite you now, if you haven't already done so, to go and view all the exhibitions that are here, go and interact with the organizations that are part of this Eastern Cape Virtual Exhibition, and we look forward to seeing you in the future. Thank you.